everyone, I am Rebecca and welcome to the Monday that hopefully just got a teensy bit better. So today is the first day of my genre jumping challenge and I kind of wanted to kick it off in a more high gear lane. I wanted to go into comedy writing because it's something I've first of all always been interested in, and second of all it's a good challenge that is a little bit on the lighter side. I don't want to go straight into like a tragedy or a horror because I feel like I want to get into those sort of in the middle so we can start on a high note, work our way up to those heavier topics, and then end on a higher note as well. So since I don't know much about genres in general because I kind of ignored them in my previous writing, I just smashed them all together and hope for the best, and that's worked out decently, but it always comes out a little erratic. So I decided I needed to start with research. And a couple of months ago, I got Masterclass. And it's really expensive. I don't think I'm going to renew. So I really want to get my money's worth out of the time I have with it. There is this Masterclass that David Sedaris has on there. And I used that for most of the research I've done here. I did look on a couple of external articles, but they weren't as helpful, they weren't as in-depth, which is understandable because I think comedy has to really come from experience and it's difficult to write about, but it's easier to talk about. With that, I've condensed his lessons down into the points that I think will be most relevant for this challenge. I also want to point out that this challenge is going to be even more challenging because I've decided that I want to do flash fiction, meaning I want my stories to stay within a 50 to 85 word range. And that in itself is really difficult for any genre, especially a new genre, but I think it's going to give me the opportunity to get a glimpse into the genre, whether or not I like it, whether or not it comes more naturally, and I think it'll still give me the basis that I need to continue on if I do enjoy it. So anyways, here are the points that I think are most relevant and some ones that I think could use some tweaking. At least for me, they might be relevant for other people. They just didn't vibe. They just didn't vibe with what I was going for. Point number one, get to the point, right? So I've done kind of a longer intro simply because this is the first video in this series. So get to your point, but don't make it too on the nose. So what this is saying is kind of start mise en scene, which is in the middle of things, and write it in a new way. So you want to keep your audience interested, even though you're getting directly to the point, you're throwing them in. You want to say that in a way that is still engaging and interesting, so you don't want it to be too in your face, right? Like you don't want it to seem like, oh, this is just comedy and that's all it is, right? You kind of want it to have more depth. Point number two. This one gets a little messy for me, okay? Because his point is engage with the world around you. And I think that wording should be changed. Hear me out. I think that it should be changed to say interact with the environment around you. And that change is important because he goes on to say in his video that we need to get our noses out of our phones and out of our laptops and interact with the people who are around us so that we can have these stories to tell later. And yes, that is true. I cannot say that that is wrong in any case. However, I would argue that one, I don't know about you, but I'm in the middle of a pandemic. Two, I have had more entertaining interactions online, especially since joining the AuthorTube community. And I think those interactions are just as valuable and can be used just as much as outside interactions, especially because the age we're going into is the age of technology. This is like the second wave of the Industrial Revolution, except it's way more ethereal. We don't know where it's going and we don't know the effects it's going to have, but I don't think that means we need to be afraid of it. We're always afraid of what we don't know, but what I've found is that I have connected with people across the world in Australia, in Ireland, in England, in places I never would have thought. And I've gotten to know these people and really care for them and build relationships that way and have funny stories online that are a new kind of funny. There's so much comedy that I think is being missed because people aren't looking at things like live streams. So occasionally get your nose out of the screen, sure, maybe, but also use all your experiences, use all your environments, because online is an environment, and the environment you're in can affect the story you tell. Point number 3, ask better questions and avoid small talk. This kind of made me feel less strange. David suggested that instead of asking what you would ask or what you would be asked at a hotel or in a taxi cab, such as, how are you? How's your day going? Things like that. Instead, ask something that's sort of out of the box. I've always naturally done this because I'm a naturally curious person. So questions like this are, one that I thought of was, have you ever had a limb transplant? Or do you know anyone who has had one? Maybe not a transplant. Maybe it's just like a fake limb or something. Point number 4, journal more and journal better. I think I've been journaling wrong. I'm not gonna lie. He read some of his entries out and I was like, I don't journal like that. It is not that in depth. It is much more, this is how I feel. And I kind of want to switch to a more narrative type of writing when I'm doing my day-to-day journaling. And he did say write every day. And I know a lot of people say, I just can't write every day. I would get burnout. And I think what he meant is at least write something every day. It doesn't have to be a story, but write what's going on in your life, write what you did today, write how you're feeling, all that stuff, because eventually it might be useful. And point number 5, and this one is where the comedy comes in, that I thought was really, really useful because I didn't even think of this. He said to not build your story around a laugh or joke. So you might have a one-liner in there that you really like and it's your baby and you think it's amazing and you know it's such a good line, but it doesn't hit right in the story you're writing. So save it for later and don't build your story around it because it will fall flat. And of course there were the more general parts of comedy where he said you should use exaggeration to your advantage. We often underplay the things that are funny in life. Point out the things that make it funny, or if you're in a frustrating experience, point out the thing that makes that experience funny later. So use exaggeration to your advantage. Another one was make fun of yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously because the reader likes seeing themselves in a character, and if you can make fun of yourself, then you know an audience is gonna relate to that because they've been through the exact same thing where they've felt like a complete fool. You just know they will. Last tip, which I thought, it's obvious once you say it, but not something I thought of, if that makes sense. He said to quote funny people, which goes back to the writing every day, because if you know someone funny, just keep a journal around and write down what they say and write down the situation surrounding what they say, because that can be great content for later. Whether or not the story is based in reality doesn't really matter, especially for me. Okay, points over. Now, how do I apply this to the world I've built? I want to go into my fantasy world that I've kind of centered everything around and write comedy in that, because I do know I like fantasy still, so I do want to stay within those bounds while exploring other genres. Comedy in fantasy. My main example would be Terry Pratchett. He does a lot of sardonic comedy in his writing and he's really amazing at it. I've been rereading The Truth lately and it just reminds you how good he is at writing things in a fantasy setting that are still so poignant and real. With that, let's go write. I am gonna get some coffee, do some tippity tapping on my laptop. I may edit what I write and then come back tomorrow and read it to you because I want it to be a bit more polished and I really want it to embody these points that I've been making. And I also just want it to be good and fun. Let's go. So my partner just called. I have to pick him up from the car place because his AC in his car is broken. So before I start writing and before I take my medication, I'm gonna go do that. Because Lord knows if I take it now and I get down to the car place and it kicks in, I'm gonna come back and just not feel like writing. So let's go do that. Also, Java just got groomed today. Say hello. Hello. Okay, be back in a bit. Okay, so we are back home. And it is freaking hot outside. I was gonna write outside, but I really don't think it's worth it. So I'm gonna try to write inside, although I'm really tired of writing inside. Do you ever just want to go somewhere new to write? Because I know that helps me a lot. But instead, I will have to settle for my room or maybe the kitchen. It's on water. Well, I was trying to do a really cool sequence of events, but let's give this one more try, okay? Cube. Still didn't work. Still didn't work. Java, do you want some ice? Do you want some ice? Come here. Come here. You want ice? You're welcome. So I'm back upstairs and I realized that on my way to drop off the partner, I left my candle burning. Thanks, ADHD. Anyways, the reason we're back up here is because I decided to paint my nails because I've been biting them again. And the only way to stop that is if they look really pretty, because I don't want to ruin it if they look really pretty. So, get to that sequence. It's a pretty nasty day, and I've been having a bit of trouble writing the short flash fiction comedy piece. But look how beautiful. This is a little spot I like to walk to in my neighborhood when I need to think, because it's about a half a mile away from my house, but it gives my brain enough time and exercise to sort of stimulate the thought process a bit more. And earlier, before this walk, I came to the conclusion that it's hard for me to write comedy, first of all, because I've never done it, of course. And second, I don't think I'm the funniest person. I think I can pull off some good one-liners occasionally, but I don't think I am consistently very funny. And so I did some research, because that's what you do when you really need to get unstuck, is you do some research and you get some exercise in. Research brought me to an article on stand-upcomedy.com. The article was on the structure of jokes. And we all know that the structure of a joke is the setup and the punchline. And that was pretty standard. So I went to the bottom of the article. It wasn't very long, a couple paragraphs at most. And it had a link. Had a link to article part 2. And article part 2 brought up something interesting. Now keep in mind this is just about jokes, it's not about stories, but what it said was that behind the setup and the punchline, there are 2 stories. One story for the setup and one story for the punchline. The story behind the setup is usually the assumption of expectation from the audience. That was good because it told me that I need to set up an assumption. The second story is the story of the punchline. And this is the story that is not in opposition to, but a twist on the original setup and story. So this defies expectations, and the entertainment value, the funniness, comes from that surprise. Because something can't be funny if you're not surprised, right? And that's something I've thought of a lot. How do you be surprising and funny? And the article really made me think you do that by setting up a pretty solid expectation, assumption from the audience, and then you defy that assumption in a way that they didn't expect. And it doesn't sound too difficult in theory. And I think that is great for one-liners, little things, 2 sentences, but I need more than 2 sentences. And I think I can apply this to a bit of a longer story. Not that much longer, because again, we're doing flash fiction, meaning 55 to 85 or whatever I said before words. What I want to do is quickly set up the expectation and say it in a manner and in a prose that is entertaining in itself, because I want this to also be artistry. So I don't want it to just be, here's the setup. I want it to be, here's a story, and here's the craft of the story, and then here is the defiance of the story that makes it funny, but also beautiful to read. Once I get back from this walk, we're gonna do attempt number 3. I've done 2 attempts before. The first one was before I did any research. The second one was after I watched David Sedaris's masterclass. And the third one is now. And I think I know where I'm going. I've said before it's gonna be in the universe that I've already been thinking of for a really long time. And I just figured out where I want this set in that world. And it's gonna be somewhere really similar to here. Do you see all the huge trees looming over me? And I'm gonna try and emulate Terry Pratchett a little bit. And I think this is gonna get me to the result I've been looking for. I will check back in after my walk. I might bring you on a couple of the paths that I go down. Let me tell you a story. Not even the glow snails, which littered the flooded streets of Cartaflan under the giant, rain-heavy elephant ears, would wear their air hats anymore. Peter, who didn't wear one himself, was still convinced everyone should have one. He convinced quite a few of his friends that everyone they know should have one too. He went door to door, selling 5 at a time, his dark coat dripping in the rain. His customers didn't want the hat themselves, but a buck might not be bad to make. So is it a story? I don't know. I went for kind of a fantasy style play on multi-level marketing companies, and I think that came across, but I do think that it could use some polishing. I think it was almost a story. It is almost there. I think it needs to go through a few more edits, but it got the vibe I was going for. I don't think it was necessarily super funny. I think it was in the comedy realm, but I don't know how to judge that exactly. Was it humorous or was it funny? And I think there is a difference there. And I think I got humorous or witty, but I think I could be more maybe concise with the comedy. I don't know. But I do think it's so close. I think it's so, so close. And what I've learned from this is I like writing flash fiction quite a bit. When it comes to comedy, I'm not sure if I learned a super amount about comedy. I do have a lot more. I have a bigger picture of what it can take to write comedy, and I did enjoy it. So I do think I would continue writing comedy. But more importantly, what I got from this is that I think I want to do just like a bunch of flash fiction pieces in the same universe and write, just in different parts of that same world with different characters, and maybe publish just a bunch of short flash fiction pieces. I think that would work well with my ADHD because they're short and I can do it quickly, and they're still entertaining and they're still in the style I want to do them in. And I think that's a great experiment for my brain specifically, because I know my concentration will only go for so long, and I know readers now will only read for so long before they have something to do or they get distracted or they want to watch something. So that's my idea. I want to publish a bunch of flash fiction pieces in the same universe all together in a collection. I'm going to be reading the flash fiction that I do for each one of these challenges for you guys, but I also am going to be writing more on this side in the same sort of style with the 85 word count. By the way, this one had 85 words exactly on the dot. I had to go through and cut a bunch of extraneous words, but it's 85 like on the nose, which I was really proud of. Anyway, so maybe look out for that on my Patreon. That is something I would be super interested on putting on there. Once I do some editing, we're going to have some rough drafts on there and some more polished versions on there. So, yeah. Let me know what you thought of this. What should I change? This is the first episode of this challenge, so let me know what you would want to see in a future episode, what you liked about this one, what you think I should keep. How about this? Let's give the challenge over to you guys. Write something really quickly that you think is funny or that you want to be funny, and put it down in the comments, message me. I'd love to read your stuff. You can find me here, you can find me on Patreon, and you can find me on Instagram. My email is below, all the links are down there, and I will see you guys next week for episode 2 of Genre Jumping. Bye guys.